Hello, I hope all is fine. Something that you may be all aware is going around, particularly in the academic circles, that is of online teaching. And it has become a necessity for the current times because there is so much of problem in coming face to face, in doing what we used to do in classrooms. And I see a lot of people giving their opinions, whether it is good, bad, ugly, whether it will work or not, etc., etc., etc. So, as an academic, which is my full-time occupation, apart from doing a bit of photography, which the last video was about that. I am also interested in knowing whether it will really work, particularly in the higher education, in the universities, where I am engaged and other people are too. So in this video, I'd like to focus on a couple of points that I think we need to understand beyond the opinions that you see around. And these opinions are coming mostly from teachers who have their own ways of looking at online teaching, whether they like it or not. And sometimes they take a position from the perspective of the students, whether they will benefit or not. So there is a mixed bag of opinions at the moment, and obviously it has to do with with the, with the people themselves, whether they are familiar already or they would learn fresh, etc., etc. So I'm going to get into a couple of points that I think will be useful, particularly for students who will be participating in online education as and when they join, and many universities are already preparing themselves to make it happen, and teachers particularly. Some of us have started already in a little more unsystematic manner, and some of us already had an exposure. We have given maybe online Zoom conference talks, and some of us had never had that experience. We just went to the classroom and saw a bunch of students and taught. So how things are going to change? The first point that comes to my mind is the question of embodiment. Whenever you think of not being in the classroom but delivering the same thing through a video, people immediately think of the lack of human contact. And we study these things in cognitive science under the banner of embodiment, or the experience-based stuff. And there is a big history of this idea, starting from Spinoza. When Spinoza was all about the embodied context-based mind, as opposed to Descartes. But I'm getting to that. So, what is embodiment? It's being present in the environment, in direct relationship with the environment, and trying to do your best. So your sensory motor apparatus is in contact with the environment, and this is in contrast to the idea that mind is just a powerful computational system, and it can get you all the knowledge and information by virtue of being such a system, applying symbolic logic. But why it is relevant in this context? So imagine yourself talking to students through the online systems like Zoom and other stuff, and embodiment is absent because they're kind of static and they're positioned in their homes, and you are talking to them or they are asking some questions, but that is no environment that binds both the speaker and the listeners. That's very important from a communication point of view. So a lot of people have aired the opinion that it's unsatisfying. And please remember that teaching is one of the greatest art forms, and it can be vigorous. Ever since, you can go back to history of great teachers, Socrates and the Indian system, and so on and so forth. So teaching is an art form. It's pretty much similar to being in an excellent theater in the presence of good actors. So apart from being a science, obviously you can't just be theatrical without having the know-how. People won't trust you. So the embodiment is absent in this format, and that's for sure. I don't think the new gadgetry is doing anything about that, except the fact that you can have a high-resolution computer monitor, a better camera, and better internet speed, but that's not going to satisfy the embodiment requirement. So my first point is that there is some truth in thinking that it's pretty disembodied. And when teaching is or any such performance is disembodied, then both the person who is doing it and the person who is receiving it, they're not in synchrony. But there's no going around that. I mean, that's a fact. We just have to get used to it, teaching in a disembodied format. But really, does it have real consequences? It has consequences at a different level. I mean, you can impart the instructions, you can tell whatever you want to tell and sew up the PPTs and stuff like that. But it remains unsatisfactory because people are not going to be participating because they can't connect and, very easily. And also the most important thing is that students, when they're sitting around in their homes or wherever they are not seeing one another. It's very important that participants, when there is a lecture professor, the participants, they see one another, the facial reactions, the gestures, and the small nuances that goes in the classroom, we all know. So it's very important that these things are part and parcel of teaching learning process, and that's not going to happen when people are sitting around focusing on the computer monitor, waiting for them, don't know when somebody is taking a turn to ask a question or the reactions to what somebody has said, and that's pretty central to human communication. So teaching is primarily communication, apart from being an art. It's an art of communication in more specialized disciplines. So it's disembodied, and let's agree on that. And there is no cutting corner to that concept, and it's so important for human communication and life itself. And teaching cannot just be outside it, because it's, after all, the experience that is imparted apart from the knowledge. Because knowledge these days, people can just Google and go to stuff and read papers and have their knowledge. But what is the role of the teacher? We have long debated that. What is the role of the teacher in continuing scenarios, nevertheless? But now the role of the teacher itself is under scrutiny in this new online format. Many have raised concerns that it's no good. So they're not directly saying it is disembodied. I'm just putting a technical concept because I think that is how it is. So if we think, the first point, if we think it is not going to be working really, or it is unsatisfactory, it is because it is disembodied. The other important point would obviously be teaching competence, because that's pretty important. We just can't put it all on the system or on the technology or etc. Whether university will provide me a high-powered internet or whether my computer is good. Primarily, it is teaching. So I don't buy the idea that if you have not been a good teacher on the floor, you can do something miracle here. So teaching primarily is teaching. I mean, that has to be respected. So we all know that teachers in this country are often evaluated on their teaching ability through various feedback mechanisms and so on and so forth. But I'm not quite sure in the current online scenario what kind of feedback mechanisms students are going to give, because either the format has to be changed, because different questions have to be inserted. And students would have some observations about the same teachers who are now teaching them through online medium. So I think teachers should also look at the potential to reinvent themselves rather than thinking in the old way. If they're going to do well when teaching was live, giving the demonstrations and interacting and laughing and being angry at times, then they have to reinvent how these things are going to work when they're just sitting in their homes or offices with a computer and they don't have direct sensory motor feedback from the students. They can become angry at times. The students are responseless, which I kind of observed in my limited experience so far. I mean, I still don't have a theory why they're silent. It's could be because of the disembodied experience that they're never prepared for that. And teaching competence matters. And that just can't be, we can't talk around that. And whenever I see a lot of people are reacting to, they're not questioning whether they are good enough for the online medium. Because the medium is the medium. I mean, you have to reinvent yourself how you can go around this and still do justice to your profession, whatever you need to deliver. Then some people I see they're commenting around the lack of resources. They're putting it on the students basically. But I think primarily the teacher, consider the country that we are a developing country and this situation is new and we just can't put it all in the government. And some universities are well endowed to give the resources, whatever, for online teaching, buying softwares, like some central universities, some IITs. But I'm not sure that all the other universities are in a position to do that. But teaching has to go on. We need to complete the syllabus. People need to graduate. so on and so forth. So teachers need to be competent. Uh, the problem that has been traditional is that there has been no teaching related resources except the fact that UGC has been conducting some refresher courses, etc., orientation, but I don't think that has been much useful in telling teachers really how to teach well. So they may have subject knowledge, but they don't really teach very well, and they get bad feedback, and they don't improve upon them, so on and so forth. But there are some excellent teachers, on the other hand, who have been, very good, influential. So we have both kinds of people. So we need to know who is actually, trying to say that online medium would not work for what reasons. So I need to also look at who is saying and what are his teaching abilities, whether he would be able to cope with this new demands or he would just be slugging more, which is also possible. So online teaching primarily requires you to reinvent yourself, keeping in mind that this is disembodied, this is this. Some people's internet speed may not be fine. Some people would not like to show their face. They would just use the audio, and so on and so forth. So we need to adjust with these factors, but we just need to also focus on our basic skills of teaching, explaining well and giving demonstrations and stretching the topic and trying to answer questions or generating discussions. So if some people could not do all these things well when things were okay, live in the classroom, they need to really think seriously how they are going to do the very same things when things are different now. And many universities have been referring to what is called a blended mode. Sometimes online, sometimes live, but I'm not quite sure if you still will meet people. Sometimes it would be a contravention of the government norms of social distancing, because you just can't be 20 feet away from the students. So we will see how these things evolve. At this point in time, people are throwing their opinions, and we are gearing up for the new semester. So these are the competence of teaching point. My second point has repercussions of students' evaluations also, because students will be evaluating teachers now at the end of the semester if everything goes online on different scales. Whether the teacher could engage them, or whether the teacher was angry just because students were not giving proper response and they were just staring at him. So we will see how it all goes. So teaching competence matters, whether online, offline, blended, non-blended, whatever it is. In this country, you cannot understand any problem without looking at the socioeconomics. And I just saw some articles in periodicals about the socioeconomic angles of online teaching, how it just won't work. I agree with that. We have over 1,000 universities and just few central universities and few IITs where obviously more money gets pumped. But what about those other 900 and so? So they are not going to, get all these systems so rapidly, but they need to keep on with the semesters. Many teachers are of the opinion that, primarily who are in the universities, and who are a bit more vocal, airing their views here and there on all kinds of things, and we know that there is a sizable population of them, that poor students wouldn't just be able to cope. Well, how poor students coped when things were okay in classroom. We know that poverty is directly linked to academic achievements. But universities, central universities in this country, that are kind of, well funded, but they don't charge a lot of money. They have a lot of poor students who sat in the classroom. Many of them have done excellently, and many people did not do well. So we already had a situation of people coming from poorer socioeconomic strata and doing well in this situation. But now, how the situation has changed. Online teaching demands that you have at least a good smartphone with, or a computer or a laptop and with internet speed. And many students who are in villages and at small towns, they may not have these things. So I'm not quite sure if university is in a position to provide all of that to them. So they would lose out, that's for sure. They won't be able to participate basically. Sometimes the power cut would be happening, and I'm noticing in this place, in Orissa, which is very frequent. It's annoying. We can't do much. Whether it's just because, I don't know whether the state, the state is poor or rich. So I already can see people, the students that are here, they would be having a bad time if it's online teaching. And internet, the Wi-Fi system doesn't work most of the time here. So we already have a situation where people from all strata cannot be provided a good online education. I'm not quite sure how to get around that point. what kind of help government or universities can do in order to make it more satisfactory. So socioeconomic angle is okay, but the other point of view is that we have to get by with minimal stuff. I mean, we need to focus on how to get going rather than not doing online or trying to say that okay we just will stay away and we will not do anything or online is bad for poor students. But poor students need to be educated as well, and this is the format now. So we just can't say that people who have no internet or no computers they will remain out of this. We have to find out a way to somehow get them interacting with this platform. I personally agree that the socio-economic angle is well justified, but we already had that angle on many other issues. That's not going to disappear. It's not a new thing that came with coronavirus. So we need to find a way out. So I'm not in support of those who are saying, it's just catastrophe for poor students. And I'm quite sure that many people have mobile phones. They watch videos, they watch YouTube. I mean, most people have. I just need to get the statistics. The universities and government, they're trying their very best, but I'm not quite sure exactly how are they going to tackle this issue of disparity in accessing with regard to the video quality and the internet speed and so on and so forth. So we have to wait and watch. But socioeconomic angle is a real angle in this country, and it can actually become a very problematic variable in order to measure the success of online teaching as we progress. Individual difference. We often talk of individual difference in cognitive science. What is that? Individual difference is your own capabilities in any work, whether it is running, it is learning, it is singing. An individual difference critically matters in teaching, learning situation. Both of the students and of the teachers. There are good teachers, bad teachers. There are good students, bad students. I'm not just talking academically, but with regard to the ability to teach and the ability to extract knowledge while being in the classroom. So, in my opinion, the online teaching demands a lot from both stakeholders. There are teachers who can get by this very easily because they anyway are good. It doesn't really affect them much. But there are people who are not teaching well, and this can pose a big problem for them because they need to really work very hard in order to upgrade their skills. And as I've said in the beginning, this is disembodied. So your older skills won't work here. You need to really be very careful with regard to being presentable and being etc. on the online platform. So individual talents are critical. And on the student side, we know that whoever has taught in higher education that there are students who sit quietly in the classroom, they don't interact, and there are students who are more active, more participating, more discussion oriented. How is that going to change? I'm expecting the students who never interacted, they're going to be facing more problems in this context because they're not going to find it any easy because the whole disembodiment is already at work and the teacher is not there, so they don't get any feedback. So they just can sit quietly in silent and get by this, and so they need to work hard in understanding the situation. For the teachers, they need to study the format well and its necessities and how they can do justice to the time. And there are probably many resources, and the universities are making an effort to educate the teachers as well. UGC has a scheme where many teachers are getting trained or they are getting exposed. I don't know numbers yet, but that effort is on. For the students, they need to really be careful with regard to the computer monitor, the teacher, and they're not seeing the other students, maybe few at a time, not the whole class. And they need to be more participating. Then they can't remain silent. And the other thing is that some are uncomfortable being seen because camera is a camera. Not many people are comfortable with a camera. Like I'm talking, there is a camera right in front of it. Me, it's not a human being. I'm not talking to a human being. So in classroom we talk to human beings. We don't talk to cameras. So many people have privacy concerns. Many people are uncomfortable. They become very shy. Maybe because of that shyness or some other reason, they don't open up. They don't ask questions. So it can create a lot of problems for teaching and learning. So we need to pay attention to the individual difference angle. Therefore, an unanimous view that it is good or bad is not going to work. We need to also keep in mind for how many it is working well and for which segment it is not working well from a cognitive individual difference point of view. If we keep aside the economic socioeconomic factors for a moment. And we then should focus on those points, how to educate them, how to make them more motivated, how to bring them into more discussions. At this point, I don't have any particular recipe to offer, but many of you who are already participating or doing online stuff or will get into the learning process, they will realize that these are real factors. And when discussions don't happen, people are silent, they don't want to be seen on video, and they have real other problems. That's quite discouraging for the entire stuff. Because online teaching, when it is disembodied, you can't make it more disembodied by not speaking even. So you need to make every effort in order to bring down the original disembodied concept variables. So I think we need to work hard on this individual difference points, and the administrators and other people who are involved in making this all happen. So keep that in mind. We don't want any students to feel left out and feel uncomfortable or feel otherwise, etc. During this process. So we need to really be careful about that point. Is there a subject-specific angle to this? Is it that science and arts and social science, the teachers would find themselves differently positioned when online teaching is concerned? Well, the point is there are some fields that require more demonstration, hands-on demonstration. All of you may know the Harvard or MIT or physics teacher Leventin, whose YouTube videos are popular because he used to just be an acrobat in classroom. But he can't do that in online, obviously, or people like that. So there are some acrobats, some teachers who are performers. They need a large stage, they shout, they jump, they become this and that. And there are some other people who are mild nature and etc., who just go for long monologues. And there are subject-specific stuff. Maybe in some subjects you can just put on some equations and give some animated demos. Yeah, the use of animations are going to be important in this because you can't just bring the students to real physical objects. In some, like humanities, maybe you can give a recorded long monologue to the people. They can, like a podcast, they can listen. But you can't do that in science, I believe. Not in my subject. So we need to be also careful about the subjects. Are we considering all the subjects? So there can't be general policies. So the teacher in a particular subject has to really be careful how online teaching demands specific things for that particular subject. It may be very different from another subject or another area because it might just work very well, but not in a certain field. Because students in different fields, they require different things. They need to see certain things, more explanations, more demos, etc. In other fields, like in traditional humanity field, people used to print a paper and used to read in conferences. So they just can probably do the same in the Zoom. They can just read out. Being on camera is not going to be much different, but not for STEM fields. So we need to see whether use more animation or whether the PPT would work, or how can we bring more demo stuff into this platform. So that is going to be subject specific, and nobody's talking about that. It's just general concerns that it's not going to work in this country because it's a poor country, or etc., etc., etc. But nobody's talking about the subject specificness of the concerns. Well, here are some good points about online teaching. As you may know, social distancing is on. So we need to have masks all the time. But when online teaching, you don't have to put a mask when you are sitting in your home. Like I'm not under any compulsion to put a mask here, unless there are some people here. So it is the only way out now to see some people without masks and interact with them, even if it is online. Because in real life, you just have to put a mask. So I think some benefit in online teaching. The other benefit is that you can be at ease. Like you don't have the hustle bustle of going somewhere and missing because of this or that. You just have a computer and internet connection. You just can be fine. So it takes out the burden of being physically present somewhere and all the other accessories. So you can be at ease at your own pace and deliver lectures and interact. So I think it takes out a lot of unnecessary stuff. So it has its own benefit. We have to see that angle also. Once you are habituated with this, I'm quite sure it will work very well. What is the future of this online teaching? Well, we don't know for sure because we have to see how the world is evolving around coronavirus, how things are changing, how universities will cope with it, whether they can really allow presence of students as we all have experienced in the past, or the online teaching will continue for a very long time. And that means that at least for a generation who are doing their masters or PhD, I mean, this is going to be the norm. So they're just going to interact mostly in online. So no. So along with this embodiedness and this and that, that's going to be the norm. We just can't do much about it. So I think the only way is to really get adjusted to this and practice well. I mean, even when you used to teach in the regular classroom, you used to practice, you used to prepare for classroom, for lecture. So you have to practice. You just can't show up, sitting in front of the smartphone and start delivering lectures. I mean, when many other things are not already working well. So you need to practice, you need to prepare. And the same goes for students. They need to have their questions ready, they need to be prepared, and they need to open up and ask questions. So it's not going to work out well if people are not preparing themselves, because already there are a lot of shortcomings with this medium. So I think that it requires a lot of practice, a lot of preparing for making the online experience good. And as you may know, around the world, many performers, many musicians, and writers, and all other kinds of people, they're all using the online platforms. There are symphonies, and there are music shows. So it's changing. So we can take inspiration from these people. If they can, if they can adjust to it, then there's no problem for us. So we can pretty much adjust. Without thinking that it's all going to be fine tomorrow. If that would be the case, we will all get back fine. Nobody's stopping us. But if that is not happening so soon, we have to get going, because everybody is using online platform. As I've just given the examples from all walks of life. People are interviewing one another. Other people are giving lectures. So it has this nice benefit. You don't have to give a lecture. I don't know if I have to fly now to America. I can just give a lecture from here. The other day I was speaking in a panel for the Indo-Sastri Foundation. I'll give a link for the recorded video below. There are some. I was speaking about grant proposals, and maybe some PhD students, others can benefit. Please have a look. So yeah, we just see around and how other people are using online platforms. Younger students are using online platforms in schools, and everybody basically. So we are no exception. And being top universities and IITs, we need to do it well, so that and as we do, we will see the real problems rather than thinking of problems now when we have not really started very well. So I just wanted to make it short. I don't know how long it has become. So these are my views, and people may agree, disagree with it, and they have their own opinions. And I just thought of sharing it with all of you. And many of you are teachers or students or administrators or from other walks of life. Feel free to comment if you have to say anything, and I would see how I can incorporate those comments for a later video. And do subscribe if you are interested in this kind of stuff, if you like it. And that's it for now. So see you sometimes later.